G'day, legends. I hope that you're doing well and feeling a bit better than myself. But the big news today that's been circling everywhere, and you've probably seen it before me, is that Germany has agreed to send Leopard 2 tanks to Ukraine and allow partners within NATO who use the Leopard 2 to then supply them also to Ukraine. This won't be the first main battle tanks that are going to Ukraine. That will be, the United Kingdom's Challenger 2, but this will be in a lot more quantity. At least that's how it's being reported. But something I want to bring up is, and I think it's being wrongfully reported and wrongfully, mainly on the Twitter sphere, but it's about Germany really holding back on this announcement and not wanting to give tanks. And Germany, the whole war, has been criticised very heavily about arms to Ukraine and holding them back. But I want to bring up this graph, which is the announcement of the first delivery date of non-Soviet heavy weapons for Ukraine. Now, you have to remember that countries like Poland and other countries within Europe had a lot of old Soviet equipment, T-series tanks and S-300 systems and the like. So this is not including that. And you'll see here that Germany is really at the beginning of a lot of this. Germany, France, and the UK. So I think it is a bit unfair to give Germany such a hard time on this. I don't see why every time it's just Germany painted in a bad light. And even the Ukrainian president, Zelensky, suggested on German TV last Thursday, this is only a day before the Ramstein summit where these new agreements got announced, that this delay was costing lives. Now, I don't doubt that, but you've got to remember there's more countries than just Germany involved in this. But something that I think is, was this a political decision by Germany on purpose to also drag the United States in with the M1A1 Abrams tanks? If Germany didn't hold this up and sort of push this across onto America, well, if we'll supply them, if you supply them, it's really being suggested that the Joe Biden administration of the USA will announce plans to send Abrams tanks within the next couple of days. Now that Germany has, said that they'll supply these 14 Leopards, I would more suggest was there some political play here? You got to remember, this is bigger than just wanting to send something and do it. Everything is politics. Everything's for votes. That's just how the governments work. Maybe Germany did hold back somewhat on these tanks and drag America in and also supply some tanks. I don't know, but that's just the way I'm sort of seeing a lot of this. But it's reported that the 2A6 variant will be the one supplied from Germany. Now, Leopard 2s come in a whole bunch of new variants, up to the 2A7, I believe, is the newest one. I could be wrong on that. But this really has a newer barrel, and it's got a slightly longer range than the variants before, and the sighting systems. And we're not sure what systems will actually be inside these tanks. When we say a tank, we're talking the hull, the barrel, whatever. There's a shitload of systems in this, from radios and sights and night vision, all of this. And we don't know how much of that equipment will then go into the ones into Ukraine, because that equipment is owned by then separate companies again. And some of that equipment is, really the secret stuff in these vehicles. You've got to remember, in a lot of military vehicles, the military secrets, the top secret shit, whatever you want to say, is not the hull of the vehicle itself all the time. Most of it is in what the radio stacks are, battle management systems are, the thermal sights, the night vision. It's all of that stuff. So we're not sure exactly what will actually be inside of this. 16 NATO countries use the Leopard 2 tanks, and reportedly 12 have agreed to transfer up to 100 Leopard 2s into Ukraine. Will this be quick? No, it won't be quick. This isn't just jumping in a car and going for a drive. The training, the crews, whatever, the crews in Ukraine are going from Soviet-era T-series tanks with autoloaders, whatever, to a significantly more modern tank, that is hand-loaded, different crew, whatever. So this won't be, announcement today, tanks to the front line tomorrow. So it may give Russia some chance to make some gains while these vehicles aren't there. We're not really sure. Something I did want to bring up is Poland has really been the one pushing this. Poland was the one who will transfer these Leopard 2s, blah, blah, blah. And Poland has transferred a lot of, not all of, but a lot of their T-72 series tanks, their Soviet-era tanks, earlier in this war. But something that is very interesting, I remember this coming up, and it came through November, December, that Poland has actually changed their main battle tank. The Polish went from T-series Soviet tanks to German Leopard tanks, and late last year have announced that they will be on a $12.3 billion deal procuring South Korean tanks and howitzers. So the Seoul agreement with Seoul, Poland aims to eventually have 1,000 K2 tanks and 672 K9 howitzers. So, Poland is going to have a massive surplus of older tanks that they're looking to shift off. They're going to be mothballed in storage otherwise. The K2 tank, South Korea, very modern tank. I believe the most expensive tank in the world currently. So the deal so far has been $5.8 billion, where Poland's actually bought 182 K2 tanks and 212 of these K9 self-propelled guns. It's like artillery piece. The aim is to up to 1,672. What would make it the biggest land force in Europe, in Poland. So that is quite incredible, and that is massive military power, where you're talking the Australian army is like 60, 70 Abrams tanks, something like this, and Poland, which, land mass is a significantly smaller country than, say, here, want 1,000 of these top-notch, state-of-the-art tanks. And I sort of think, well, come on, Poland, if you're that keen to transfer tanks to Ukraine, maybe do a deal with Seoul. South Korea is one of the biggest arms dealers in the world at the moment. Do a deal there, transfer those. If that's really your goal, is to get tanks in Ukraine, maybe do that. And of course, Poland's doing this because if Ukraine were to fall, Poland, Romania, they're next to be invaded. And Poland know they need an incredibly powerful military, and people know the history with Poland. But this is going to be a massive headache logistically. So we know that Ukraine is getting Challenger tanks. We know that Ukraine is most likely getting Leopards within the next coming weeks, months. We don't know when they'll be delivered. Most likely, Ukraine, well, maybe not most likely, but Ukraine could potentially get Abrams tanks from the US. We know that there's Abrams tanks already in Poland. And likely to, maybe depending, that Macron from France could get French Leclerc tanks as well. Logistically, this is going to be a fucking nightmare. Operating 4 completely different type of main battle tank. Logistically, very difficult. Different engines, different systems, different language of things written inside. It's going to be a big shock. And, there may be something where the US go, we won't transfer Abrams, but we will buy X amount of Leopards and transfer that. I'm not particularly sure. This is why a lot of Soviet equipment was given earlier on, because, well, it was easier to buy Soviet equipment from somewhere else and give it to Ukraine rather than retrain people and go from there. We saw this with the helicopters, with like the Mi-8 helicopters. Instead of the Black Hawks to Ukraine, we'll give the Soviet-era choppers we bought for Afghanistan and give them to Ukraine because they can jump in and use it straight away. So we're not really sure how that is all going to look. But logistically, very difficult. Will we see a massive shift on the battlefield? Potentially with this. Ukraine has said that they need 300 tanks to do the offensive and retake and win this war. So this is still falling very short of that. But at least on the Ukraine side, I guess it's a step in the right direction for that offensive. Will tanks be the be-all and end-all? No, tanks never are be-all and end-all. There is nothing that is a silver bullet towards this. Could this escalate tensions within Europe, Russia, whatever? I really don't think so. I think we're right at that upper limit anyway. Can Russia continue to escalate? I don't know. I don't know how much more escalation they can do, other than if you want to talk about nuclear weapons, but that's just, up in, who cares? Like, when I say who cares, I mean, if it gets to that point, we're all stuffed anyway. Like, where should we hold back? Where should we not? That's for politicians to decide what to do. But I don't know. People saying we don't want Russia to escalate. I don't know how much more they can escalate. Potentially with Belarus, but we're not sure. We don't know how their makeup of their forces look. We don't know the casualties. We don't know the equipment in storage. We have no idea. I know that people love to throw around these 100,000 Russians dead and this and that. Realistically, what's the figure? No one knows. Russia probably don't know. These are estimates, and these are estimates coming from Ukrainian sources. We have no idea. I'm hearing numbers the same from Russian sources on the Ukraine. So I'm hearing dramatic numbers thrown around everywhere, but honestly, no one really knows. Something else I found interesting was there was a female Russian journalist, seemingly hit by a round or shrapnel on the front lines. And a lot of people jumped on that Ukraine is now targeting journalists. And Well, if you look at this, journalists, and I've been there myself doing this exact job, you have a responsibility to make known that you're a journalist. You know, you don't wear camouflage clothing. You wear blue press patches like the ones up here, black whatever, black helmet, if not blue, jeans, shirt, you know, whatever. This lady was there. Yeah, I don't doubt that she's a journalist, but she's wearing Russian camouflage and a camouflage vest that I can't see any press stuff on. So, you know, looking down the sights of a rifle or whatever, realistically, you might think that's a soldier. I don't bloody know. And, you know, that's difficult. But I've heard that she's all right. And, you know, that's just that. It's a hard thing. There's been journalists killed by both sides in this. Absolutely there has been. And if there's been a lot of mistakes, there's been a lot of mistakes on the journalist's point too. I believe a lot of the deaths of the journalists here are their own responsibility to a degree of, are you doing the right thing? Are you going somewhere silly? You know, are you driving up to a checkpoint really fast with not marked? You're wearing body armor in the car. You're hanging out the window with a camera that could look like something. It's things you may not think of. It may look bad in hindsight, but it's all situational. It is a dangerous place to work. This is an example of, I think, reporting that is just how you can shift stories to and from. So the Kiev Independent 2 days ago reported Ukraine reportedly launched strike on former hospital housing Russian soldiers in occupied Lugansk Oblast. The directorate said, citing its sources, the former hospital was housing Russian soldiers, particularly those fitted with Rozman Kadyrov of Chechnya. And this is funny because this is just how you see reporting going both ways. If they say former hospital, well, was it a former civilian hospital? Were these guys, was this now a makeshift military hospital? Was this bedding for guys? We don't know those details. But I think it's a bit rich to celebrate this, because if this was in reverse, if there was a former hospital hit in Ukraine, it doesn't matter if it was empty or not, it would be reported as a hospital or a school or a this or a that. I think it's a weird thing to use this as a bit of a bragging point. You've got to remember, the Kiev Independent is very, very pro-Ukrainian media. And, you know, that's how it is. Most media is pro-Ukrainian media. Most people don't even attempt to try and find a line of some level of both sides. It's ridiculous. But, you know, they did cop a lot of flack. So when Russia does it, it's a hospital. But when Ukraine does it, it's a former hospital. Like, both sides don't use schools or hospitals for the military, and it has been well documented, which it has been well documented. There's big areas, you know, a lot of people set up for it. But it's a bit rich to do one but not the other. So this is not a war crime. Where do the sick and wounded Russian soldiers go when they go to hospital, to the pub? And I could see people's side of this. 100% I can. And I think this stuff needs to be reported correctly. If a hospital has been targeted, I don't give a shit who's in it. I don't care if the Taliban are in it. I don't care if Russians are in it. I don't care if Ukrainians are in it, whatever. If that is an unarmed hospital, that is a big deal. That's a war crime. I'll never be a celebrationist of people losing their life, especially if it's in a medical facility. I see far too many people who have had no experience with death, trauma, things like that, jump on the bandwagon of, let's murder them and do this and do that. Even people I've talked to who are like, yeah, well, they've killed 100,000 civilians, so we need to go kill 100,000 civilians of them. The whole eye for an eye thing, it's just, it's out of hand, and it's making good, normal people crazy. Like, I agree. Yeah, Russia shouldn't be there. Russia's in the wrong. And I'll never defend Russia as well for the horrific war crimes they've committed and things they've done. But I won't back any side in allowing that either. Okay, my rant done. So we're going to jump into the map now. And there has been some reasonable shift the last couple of days. So today is the 25th of January in Australia. So we're back on the 21st down here. And we'll roll through to the 22nd, 23rd. You can see north of Soledar, Russia is continuing to push up well past Soledar now into the north. 24th, you can see between the 23rd and the 24th, Russia did make some more gains, significant gains. And when I'm talking significant, I'm not meaning massive gains, but I'm talking gains they've fought for dramatically, because there's been so much bloodshed on this front. 24th and then the 25th. So Russia is having some success and continuing this operational encirclement of Bakhmut, and Ivanovsky this road is completely under fire of the Russians. You're talking a distance of, 3 kilometers. That's well within mortar fire. That's within heavy machine gun fire, 50 cal Dushkas, things like that. That is a bad situation, and especially where Russia actually is, we don't really know. But you can see that there are gains being made, and this is a very, very difficult situation for Ukraine. We talked last time down near Kyiv that Russia apparently has tried an offensive here in the direction of Zaporizhia. I don't really have anything to back that up other than Ukrainian sources saying that, but Russia made maybe some small gains, but nothing really to write home about in that area. The only real movement we're seeing on the front line, at least in my opinion, is in this Bakhmut-Soledar area. This is where a massive amount of forces are on both sides, and we continue to see build-up of Belarusian soldiers above Kiev in Belarus. So could that open a new front? I'm unsure. I actually am talking tonight, and this will be up in the next day or two, to an Australian who's actually in Bakhmut and reached out to me basically saying, I need to talk to someone about the situation here because it's not being portrayed correctly of what's actually happening and the human cost and the corruption and things like that. So that will be coming out very soon. I've only spoken in little messages back and forth, so I don't know exactly how that's going to go, but it may be interesting, and I think some of the things she was initially telling me were very eye-opening, and he's there doing humanitarian work. But today I think that's about it. Thank you very much. Really, the podcast I did with Josh, which was a video before this with a foreign fighter, has had really good feedback, constructive criticism, a lot of stuff, so I really appreciate that. I was feeling so unwell when I did it. I wish we did a bit more, but I will be returning to Ukraine in the coming weeks, month. I'm not really sure. It's more of a financial issue than anything at the moment, and finding some time. And I'm hoping to sit down with him and do a podcast in person. So that would be even better. I find that a lot easier than over Zoom. So look, as always, if you want to support me, everything's down below. But thank you for spending a bit of time with me today. I really, really appreciate it. And I'll see you in the next 24, 48 hours at some point. So look after yourselves. Thank you.